could you please rise for the piping of the colors and remain standing for the national anthem and the minute of silence. We will now observe a minute of silence in honor of Superintendent Thomas Michael Dunn and all of those paramedics who have gone before us. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome Tom's family, our honored guests, and members of the Ottawa Paramedic Service family to this memorial for our friend and colleague, Tom Dunn. My name is Robert Davidson. I'm the Commander for Special Operations Section, and I've had the great honor and privilege of working with Tom since the creation of Ottawa Paramedic Service in 2001. For the last 3 years, Tom was an integral part of the Special Operations Section in his role as Superintendent of Regulatory Compliance and Infection Control. Tom grew up in Oregon, and his long and distinguished career started in 1960 with service in the US Navy, where he served as a hospital corpsman. Hospital corpsmen work aboard ships, but many people don't know they are also the combat medics for the US Marine Corps. And when an average military person serves in Vietnam, they serve 12 months. Tom served a 16-month tour of Vietnam in what was called the Brown Water Navy, which was made up of small, fast patrol boats that patrolled the Mekong Delta. During that time, he was awarded the Medal for Bravery. On his discharge in 1965, Tom returned to Portland, Oregon, and started working with AA Ambulance Company. Ambulance services at that time provided basic first aid and oxygen, but very little other medical care. It was a time when returning military medics with so many skills and so much experience started asking, why can't we provide the same level of care at home as we did in Vietnam? And Tom was part of that major shift in thinking, and he assisted in the creation of the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians, which is one of the major organizations in the United States today for paramedics. In 1969, Tom went to Honolulu as an ambulance supervisor, and he returned to the USA in 1971 to take the advanced life support training in one of the very first paramedic programs. And then he worked on a helicopter flight as a helicopter flight medic in the Rockies. By comparison, Ontario did not get a comprehensive advanced care program until 1995, 24 years later. And for many of us who started back in the 70s, that was a long way. Tom got to live the dream that we waited for many, many years and worked so hard to get. In 1976, Tom assisted with paramedic training with Seattle's pioneering Medic One program and Shepherd Ambulance Service. It was a time of immense change in how paramedicine was evolving. And if you've ever watched the movie Mother Jugs and Speed, or seen Rescue 911 with Roy and Johnny, you can see how great a change was taking place. And Tom was in the middle of it all. In the 1980s, Tom's life took him to Saudi Arabia to the King Fayed Hospital in Jeddah. There, following a particularly harrowing mass casualty incident, he assisted with the initiation of their paramedic program, and he worked as a paramedic supervisor. Tom came to Canada in 1990, at a time when the province did not recognize any outside training or experience. So he enrolled in Algonquin College and he took the Emergency Medical Care Assistant program and started all over again in his chosen country. He worked as a primary care paramedic for St. Lawrence Ambulance Service, which later became Rural Metro, and was promoted to operations manager in 1998. Tom came over to Ottawa Paramedic Service with the download from the province in 2001. He became our regulatory compliance officer and saw us through our Ministry of Health certifications as a service. He went on to become an inspector with the provincial review team that performed certification reviews across the province. And that was one of his great joys, was to travel and help other services improve and become better at what they did. Tom was a lifelong learner, and late in life he became a certified infection control professional with the Canadian Hospital Infection Control Association. He served on many best practice committees, and he created pioneering documents that guide paramedic infection control in our service and elsewhere to this day. Tom was absolutely dedicated to his role to protect the public, our patients, and his colleagues and their families by advocating for proper infection control practices and procedures. His paramedic infection control or PIC document is used daily as a guide to keep us safe. He was known for his rigorous follow-up when paramedics were exposed to communicable diseases, or had blood exposures or needle stick injuries and had to go on prophylactic medications. He would leave no stone unturned to get the right information for them as soon as possible. Tom was a certified paramedic to the end of his days. It was his pride, it was his profession. He lived life large and generously, giving of himself in the service of others. It was an honor to have been a supervisor. It was an honor to have worked with him. Our next speaker will be Sheila Stanislawski, Executive Director of the Civic Institute of Professional Personnel.
Thank you, Bob, Myra, family, and the whole paramedic family. I am so honored to be here today to talk about Tom. As I was listening to Bob talk, I realized that wearing my CIPP hat, I represent about 1,800 people. As a parent, I'm supposed to say I love them all the same. But Tom was special. He was not like the other 1,799, but don't tell them because some of them are here. As I posted in the online legacy book, it's painful for me to speak of Tom in the past tense. He was a presence for me, whether through correspondence, his attendance at meetings, and most significantly, when he and I met on numerous occasions to just talk. And we interacted not because Tom was unhappy or griping, quite the opposite, but rather because he wanted to explore and understand issues and make suggestions on how things could be better for his colleagues. In fact, it is because of Tom that changes were implemented for his fellow employees who were beyond what we told is the normal retirement age. But there is still a lot of work to be done. And I want you to know, Myra, that when we do this work, it'll all be in Tom's memory. For the last 10 days, Tom has not been out of my thoughts. I found myself accessing his obituary on a regular basis, just so I could see his face, his smile, and so I could, through his photo, hear his voice. He and I last spoke several weeks ago, and we were supposed to speak again last week. I will miss that. Whether we were discussing work issues, family, health concerns, or the state of the world, the constant was that Tom was always interested and was always respectful. And that truly is the theme of my thoughts regarding Tom. He respected his family, his co-workers, the people he served, and the work that he did. He respected the process and the concepts. That is not to say that he always agreed, of course, but he was never disrespectful. I found myself combing through the volume of emails that Tom and I exchanged over the years. One advantage of being an email hoarder, I guess. And I saw something that I'd never really noticed before. Tom always signed off his emails by saying, respectfully, Tom. No one was more serious than Tom that without respect, we are but a shadow of what we can be. I will miss Tom. I will miss his checking in just to say hi, his gratitude for any help he received, his wisdom, and most importantly, his respect. I am so proud to have found him.
Speaking on behalf of our paramedics and staff, Advanced Care Paramedic Steve Hallam.
Thank you all for attending this evening to celebrate the life and times of Tom Dunn, and thank you so much to the family for sharing this with us. Tom Dunn was a very special man. To dedicate such a demanding and unique career to span 5 decades is no less a phenomenal feat, and those special people are few and far between. Tom was a very unpretentious kind of guy who would not be one much for pomp and ceremony. He would be humbled by the accolades being rained down upon him this day, but even Tom, looking down upon us, could not discount his marvelous achievements and hopefully would step back and contemplate what he meant to his co-workers and his peers. He would be so proud of how paramedicine has developed exponentially over a short period of time. In the annals of our short history, Tom looms big. But I am not speaking here as an historian of Tom's lifetime. His accomplishments are quite well known and anecdotally quite well documented. I am speaking here from the hearts of the paramedics who rode with him out in the field, taught with him in the classroom, convened with him at meetings, shared meals with him in the lunchroom, and laughed with him everywhere. Tom had another family, the paramedic family. As one can clearly see here today, it is quite a large family. Tom parachuted into our lives from the United States in the early 90s and immediately began a mission to extol the virtues of paramedicine and all that it encompassed. Although many were skeptical, Tom was impervious to this tainted attitude and persevered with his message. He was ahead of his time in that respect and never wavered from his passion and without trepidation. As he moved forward through frontline and supervisory positions, we were fortunate enough to have him land on our doorstep at the Ottawa Paramedic Service. He flourished here in his newfound roles of educator, mentor, and policy development. In dating myself, I come from an age of ambulance drivers with no protective gloves or masks, no antiseptic hand wash, inconsistent linen replacement, and spotty stretcher cleansing. Today, we live in a world of decontamination bays, communicable disease protocols, infection control, and a myriad of protective equipment. Tom had a large hand in these developments. But not only did we benefit from his expertise, so did our provincial and national counterparts as well. Tom, the man, was in awe of paramedics and their impact on patients' lives, while being oblivious to the fact that he himself had impacted so many others during his tenure here with us. He touched the lives of all of us in one way or another, both professionally and emotionally, and always in a positive manner. He could be counted upon as a teacher, resource person, advisor, and most of all, a friend. It's not over the top to link Tom's name to such superlatives as kind, considerate, passionate, tenacious, devoted, caring, self-confident, composed, moral, and honorable. The list is infinite. He was and is an inspiration to us all, and as one can see from the gathering today, Tom is genuinely regarded in such high esteem and much vaunted by his peers. Some might muse that heroes are recognized for events of epic proportion, and there are those heroes who shun the limelight but pack an equal punch. Tom was our hero and one of our own. To the youngest of our staff, I know that Tom would advise you to look forward and never look back. To the eldest of our staff, I know that Tom would advise you to appreciate where you came from and guide others with your experience. In closing, to Tom's family, from our family to yours, thank you so much for bringing Tom to us and sharing him with us. On behalf of the most junior of rookies to the most seasoned of veterans, I can state unequivocally that we all consider ourselves extremely lucky to have known him and count on him as a dear friend. Please rest assured and be comforted in the knowledge that Tom's legacy has made our paramedical world a safer place to practice. He made a difference, and we owe him a debt of gratitude that we can never repay. This man who charmed us all with his ever-infectious smile will always, always be remembered.
Speaking on behalf of our medical director, Deputy Chief Kevin Newell.
Good evening, everybody. When Tom passed away and we were deciding how we were going to memorialize him and celebrate his life, we sent out a communique to all of our staff and our paramedic family, extended throughout the organization, throughout Eastern Ontario, and of course at the base hospital as our regulatory body. And we asked everybody if they had any anecdotes, stories they wanted to tell, and some of those you've seen projected in the room where we had the memorial. Some of them have been pasted on some walls, the copies of emails. And the medical director, Dr. Justin Maloney, sent me an email and said, I can't be there tonight, could you say some words for me? And he wrote them down. And I also am going to say something from another one of our paramedics who's only been here for a few years. I'm not going to tell you how I miss Tom as a friend, as a coworker, as an employee. That's already been talked about quite a bit, and you can see what kind of a remarkable man he was. But I will get on with what Dr. Maloney wanted to say. It is unfortunate, but it's typical in our world. He can't be here tonight because somebody else has to be out there helping you. Justin wrote, "Well, Tom, it seems like a long time since I first met you. You proudly wore a St. Lawrence ambulance patch back then. Even then, you were a gentle, mature professional. So many of those boys, there weren't many girls back then, loved working with you. When Action Paramedic came along and reared its noisy, bubbling head, you were supportive and smiling every time we met. I knew if we were heading in some wrong direction, you would speak up. As the system moved ahead, we all moved with it, and we moved proudly. After all these years, you still rule the OPS state wherever you are. Even now, as everyone gathers to pay tribute, you are here, as you will be in our thoughts tomorrow and for a long time to come. You are the sincere, excellent paramedic, the true paramedic, an example for so many of your colleagues who have gathered here. You will understand more than most that there are those you worked with who cannot be here tonight because we need them roaming out there, responding to a crisis, working in the system you helped develop in your quiet, excellent manner over so many years. I am one of those who cannot be here tonight. If you look, you'll find me in the emergency department. I will think of you that way, and when I see you, even if you're not there. Yes, I'll see you around, Tom." I'm now going to read something from Aaron Paul. He's a young paramedic who's only been with us for 3 years. When I met Tom, it was when I started with the Ottawa Paramedic Service, cleaning the ambulances as a student. When I first spoke to him, I noticed he had a genuine interest in me as a person, and his eyes communicated that he actually cared about me. Many other people can attest to this, I am sure. For most people, we are rushing from one thing to the next, and you don't take the time to properly engage someone when you really talk to them, especially those you do not know well. Tom was different. It may have been because he was from an older generation, but I believe that is simply who he was. When you spoke to him, you didn't feel like you were taking up his time. He invested in you. From the first time we met, he remembered my name and greeted me with it every single time, and with that kind smile. Tom was incredibly knowledgeable and a subject expert in his field. Despite this, he never made people feel inferior when talking with them. He did his work, and he got on our cases about infection control because he cared about the staff and he was responsible for, and not just because it was his job. It has been said, it is the way one treats his inferiors more than the way he treats his equals, which reveals one's true character. Tom was a positive example of this. In many ways, Tom felt like a paramedic grandfather to me. I'd sit in wonder at the lunch table as he'd recount some of his life's adventures and experiences around the globe, from being a paramedic in the United States to his time in Saudi Arabia as a personal paramedic detail for a prince, to his service in Hawaii, often doing air transfers to and from a leper colony. Tom captivated my attention. He spoke with such humility, and his accomplishments, and it was real in terms of some of the difficulties associated with our line of work. His true compassion for other people shone through in his stories. I believe a measure of a man is not necessarily in his accomplishments, but in his strength of character. Tom embodied that for me as well. Aaron wanted a quote from Ecclesiastes in 7.2. "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to his heart." There are things we learn here at the paramedic service that we will not learn elsewhere. To Tom, I thank you for this example to us. You made an impact on my life and in many others, and I hope to see you again someday. And that was from Aaron Pohl. Tom knew him for 3 years. I knew Tom since he came to Canada. I was a supervisor in a paramedic service just south of Ottawa in St. Lawrence, working for Ron Dalglish, and I remember working my very first shift with Tom. And back then, some of you paramedics aren't going to believe this, we used to work 12 hours in the office, then we'd work 12 hours on call and sleep at the station, then we'd work 12 hours in the office, then we'd work 12 hours on call, and we'd sleep at the station, and we'd do that for 3 days straight, and then we'd go home. Yes, we'd work for 72 hours in the station. And I remember that first shift, and you get to know somebody when you live with them for 3 days and you'd never met him before. And I said to Tom, "What brought you here?" And he said, "I followed my wife," after he regaled me with some of these stories. I found out Tom was in the military, and I spent some time in the military as well. We had that bit of a bond, and we always talked about that. To this day, to the last time I saw him, every morning he'd come in the office, usually just a bit after I did, and I'm in pretty early. And I'd say, "Morning, Tom," and he'd say, "Morning, Chief." And I can't tell you how many times I say, "Tom, you don't have to call me Chief." And he said, "Yes, I do." That's the kind of man Tom was. He was a good man. He is a good man. I will personally miss him very much. He was my friend.
I would now like to introduce our final speaker, Chief Anthony Monte.
Myra, members of Tom's family, friends and colleagues. We've heard many stories about Tom and what he's meant to all of us, a kind and gentle soul that loved his profession and was proud of serving with us. Tom's desk was just outside my office, and I would see him daily, and as he would always pass by, he'd say, "Hi, Chief," as he passed me in the hallway, as only Tom could. And I would retort by saying, "Good morning, Mr. Dunn," or "Good day, Thomas." We had the opportunity often to speak about the service, and I would always leave that conversation with feelings of being positive and upbeat. He'd often tell me how so he believed in the service and what we had built and the direction we were heading. Needless to say that coming from him and with his background, this meant a lot to me. On some days, I'd be sitting in my desk with my door open, and Tom's voice would be very loud as he was speaking to someone on the phone. I would jokingly say to myself, "Geez, is he losing his hearing?" Understanding that that affliction is likely in all of our futures from hearing that siren blaring over our head for so many years. But then I'd realize that he was arguing or getting annoyed with some hospital staff person. He was attempting to get information because 2 paramedics had been exposed to something, and like a lioness protecting her cubs, Tom was going to get the information to care about his paramedics come hell or high water. I also had the pleasure this year of having Tom and Myra at my table at the Ontario Association of Paramedic Chiefs Gala in Toronto, and see Tom receive his Governor General's Exemplary Service Medal for 20 years of service. Tom's service as a paramedic dates back more than 52 years, but in Canada, the 20-year mark was obtained and recognized this year. When my colleague John Pernot, the former chief of Waterloo, who MCs all of our events, found out about Tom's 52 years, he came to see me and asked if he could mention it during the gala. I immediately said yes. During the presentation, Tom was asked to stand like everyone else, and the MC made mention of his years. Spontaneously, the often jaded paramedic chiefs as a group and their guests rose to their feet. Tom received a standing ovation that lasted some 10 minutes from the more than 1,000 delegates at our premier gala event. I was so proud of Tom, and it was so well deserved. In conclusion, I searched for some thoughts of wisdom or a poem that I could leave with you tonight. And in recognition of his beginnings as a corpsman in the U.S. Navy, I found a poem by Tecumseh, a famous warrior chief of the Shawnee First Nation. He's revered both by the U.S. Navy that Tom served in and Canada for his defense of our soil in the War of 1812, a man of both nations like Tom. This poem is also inscribed in the U.S. Naval Academy wall that maybe Tom passed by during his youth. It was a poem for me that reflected how Tom lived, and you've heard a lot of that tonight, the type of man he was. And I'd like to read an excerpt of it tonight, but I'd like to read it to Tom. So you live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life. Perfect your life. Beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you cross over the great divide. Always give a word or sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger, when in a lonely place. Show respect to all people and grovel to none. When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that then when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing like your death song and a hero and die like one coming home. Rest in peace, my friend Tom. Thank you.
I've been told the family might like to speak.
Tom has a little plaque that has been mounted on...
Just that. There we go.
Tom has a little plaque that has been mounted on his desk for as long as I can remember. It reads, "Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget about them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it well and serenely." Ralph Waldo Emerson. Tom lived that way, and from the words written and spoken about him, I think many of you already know that. He was a humble man, the wind beneath many wings, and he would be so moved by what you have done here tonight. Thank you, and God bless you all.
At this time, our Sergeant Major will confer the Ottawa Paramedic Service flag that flew over our headquarters on the day that Tom passed away to the Chief, who will present it to his family as a symbol of our appreciation for his dedicated service to his colleagues at Ottawa Paramedic Service and to the citizens of the City of Ottawa. Our ceremony of remembrance is now concluded. There will be light refreshments served in the lobby. Thank you to all of those who attended, and those who assisted in making this service happen, the Special Operations Section, all those who stepped forward to bake, or to set up things, or to order things, or to cover their peers on duty so that others could attend, and all of those who traveled so far to attend this, and to the Professional Paramedic Association of Ottawa and the Paramedic Help Fund for their financial assistance to make this ceremony possible. Thank you, merci, good night.